Nowadays, a lot of people have the same problem. They owe all this money to the banks and they can't pay. Then the phone calls start. Then the letters start to come in, and it's a huge stress. Today's Inside Tip, we're going to tell you how to get some breathing space by using the same rules the banks use to chase you to get back at them. Did you know that banks can only call you during certain hours and that they can only give you 3 unsolicited calls every month? That's because there's laws out there to protect you, things like the Consumer Credit Act, Consumer Protection Code, and the Code of Conduct on Mortgage Arrears. And this means that you have certain rights and protections even if you're in debt and you can't pay. So here's what you need to know. If you want to get the protection of the law on your side, then you have to engage with the lender. What does that mean? It means when they write you a letter, you write back. They give you a call, pick up the phone and speak to the person. But for a lot of people, they feel incredibly hassled by continuous contact. So today, I'm going to teach you how to use the rules to buy yourself some breathing space. So here's my first tip. Banks can only call you between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday to Saturday, never on a Sunday and never on a public holiday. So if they call outside of those hours, they're breaking the law. The second tip is this. Banks can only make 3 unsolicited calls to you every month. But if they don't leave a message and you don't pick up, they can keep ringing you. So the answer is always pick up your phone. Ask the person who calls for their name, ask them for their direct line phone number, and ask them to verify that this is an unsolicited call. That last point is very important. Why is it important? Because if you don't want them calling you all the time, you've got to get them to use up their 3 lives. So when you answer the phone, just say, "I can't talk right now." If they offer to call back, don't agree to it, because then it's not an unsolicited call the next time. So the answer that you've got to give them is this, and memorize it. Tell them, "No, I don't want you to call back. In fact, what I'd rather you do is that you go ahead and use another one of your unsolicited calls at your own convenience to do that." And by doing that, they're starting to use up one of their 3 lives. The idea isn't to frustrate the banks entirely, because then you're not engaging with them. Instead, what you're doing is getting them to use up most of their 3 lives so that the one opportunity they get results in the most meaningful engagement possible. Because once they're gone, they've got to wait until next month. And that's my insider tip from the world of finance.
Our insider. It doesn't look like Russell Crowe, but, you know.
I like Russell Crowe underneath. On the inside, it's the bit you can't see. Okay. 6-pack and all that stuff.
I'm wondering why you've mentioned Russell Crowe.
Didn't he make a movie called The Insider?
Oh, yeah, okay. I was thinking Tom Cruise.
I was thinking Gladiator. Everyone's confused.
But anyway, very clever, Karl. Because, I mean, you know all these loopholes to save people, I suppose, getting hassled.
Yeah. My main job within the company is actually as a compliance officer, so I'm familiar with the laws and regulations in this area. And I suppose really what I'm advocating isn't to go out and intentionally frustrate the banks. But if lenders are really hassling you, and calling multiple times a day, it's a huge amount of stress. As a matter of fact, there was something in the papers about 2 weeks ago where one person said that they're getting these auto calls 5 and 6 times every single day. And that's where it's a robot calling you. But if you don't pick up, it just continues. And so it's important that you do pick up, you speak to them. And if you feel that they're pushing their luck with you too much or that they're calling inappropriately, well, then you can use those methods to effectively frustrate them to the point that you're still engaging with them, but that they're really starting to understand, I only have one chance to really talk to this person sincerely. I'm not going to be able to use any bully tactics. I'm not going to be able to keep hassling them. And that's what I think you need to do. Have a strong relationship with your creditors if you're in trouble, but make sure that you're on an equal footing.
Well, okay, but it's very simple for them to make the next call a solicitor one by simply saying, "Look, Mr. Deeter will ring you tomorrow."
But that's precisely why I'm saying is that when they say, "We'll ring you tomorrow," just say, "Well, that will be another unsolicited call." Or if they say, "Will I call back tomorrow?" If you say yes, then you've actually invited them to call you back. So, which is why you need to use the line and say, "No, I'd rather that you don't call me back at that time. You call me at your own convenience and use another unsolicited call." They only get 3 of them per month.
That takes an awful lot of control when you're dealing with phone calls from the bank and letters from the bank. At the best of times, you're hassled. And what you're saying is people need to take a deep breath and calm themselves.
Like, when you look at the way the rules are designed, the banks use them in their favour, and they're not jumping up and down, pulling their hair out. So in responding to them, it's best that you do the same thing. Don't jump up and down and get angry about it. Just step back, take a deep breath, and use the rules legally in your favour. And that's really what the insider information is about, is that those are genuine legislation changes in your favour. It's the Code of Conduct on Mortgage Arrears, Consumer Protection Code, and they exist to protect people who have problems, even if they can't pay. We've told you how to do it. So it's up to you really to use that information responsibly.
Well, Karl, there is a glimmer of hope this week for people in mortgage arrears, specifically with AIB. They have said yesterday that they're going to engage in talks with the 33,000 in mortgage arrears with them to see if they can come up with some type of a deal before the summer.
Well, I think what they actually said was they hope to have it by the end of the year that they've gotten through. Now, they've also had 6 years to do this. They've received over 20 billion euro from the Irish taxpayer. You know, we've bailed them out, and they're very far behind. So what they're really doing is saying we're going to catch up on the job that we didn't do up to now. And it's important to remember that suddenly they're coming out with this grandiose statement. They've made statements like it in the past that have proved to be nothing. And it's also at a time where personal insolvency legislation is coming out. And I think that what a lot of the banks are realizing is that when this law change comes in, we can either have people on our side or against us. If they're against us, they're going to hide behind the new set of legislation that will effectively make our lives worse. So we're better off to bring them in and we all be friends and find a solution that doesn't involve outside parties. And that's really what the underlying incentive is here for the lender. They're not, you know, out there to do the common good. They realize that if they don't start getting people on side and solving their problems long term, they're just going to go into the other process.
But there are people who are just on the cusp of going into arrears, and they won't be spoken with, we're led to believe, unless they're in arrears.
That's a pretty common issue. And what I would say is that the Code of Conduct on Mortgage Arrears actually defines pre-arrears as something that warrants protection. You should be treated the same as if you are in arrears. But banks are so overwhelmed with the existing arrears problem that no matter how many staff they throw at it, they actually can't get through it at the moment. Certainly not when it was all building up rapidly. And that goes for AIB, it goes for all of them. And so a lot of the people in that situation were finding that unless they actually went into arrears, they weren't being taken seriously. So I think that what we need to do probably is start to change the way that we look at this, because a lot of the people who have debt problems actually have multiple debts. It's not just a mortgage. So don't miss your mortgage payments. Do try and get in on a pre-arrears case, but certainly get your credit cards, your credit unions, any unsecured debt, and tell them to go and hang until you sort out all of your problems. And we'll have other tips for that as well in coming weeks.
Okay. Well, the first two tips that we start with today are good ones. Remember them, folks, because you'll probably get to use them and need them in the weeks and months ahead. Karl, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, you at home may have a story or question for Karl, so if you do,